First annual Virginia Association of Democratic Chairs Candidate Forum. Thank you everybody so much for attending this Friday evening. We're going to try to get it started right on time this evening. My name is Lisa Savaglio. I am the Vice Chair of the Northern Virginia region for the Virginia Association of Democratic Chairs. And I'm also the chair of the Loudoun County Dems. And I'm very, very happy to be introducing tonight our wonderful moderator, Amy Friedenberger. She has been a reporter with the Roanoke Times for the past 7 years. And when she is not out there pestering our politicians, she enjoys hiking in the Shenandoah and just taking in all of the wonderful things that the state of Virginia has to offer. I see we've got lots of more people joining us. So we're gonna give it just a couple minutes here before we get started with Amy to make sure that we've got everybody in attendance. And just thank you guys so very much for taking your Friday evening to learn some more about our candidates. Okay, Amy, you want to go ahead and get started?
Hi, I think everybody can hear me. Attorney General Herring, Delegate Jones, thank you so much for participating in this forum. And it's great to have people watching from the comfort of their homes tonight. Hopefully this forum will be helpful to voters ahead of the June 8th primary. Let me introduce the candidates. Attorney General Mark Herring became the 48th Attorney General of Virginia in 2014, and he's running for a third term. Previously, he served in the Senate of Virginia, and he was on the Board of Supervisors in Loudoun County, where he's lived for most of his life. We also have with us Delegate Jay Jones, who has been serving in the House of Delegates since 2017, representing a seat previously held by his father. Jones is a partner at a law firm in Norfolk, focusing on litigation. So the rules for tonight, each candidate will receive 2 minutes for an opening statement and then 2 minutes to answer each question before we go to 2 minutes for closing statements. I'll determine if a candidate gets 30 seconds for a response or a rebuttal. Someone will hold up cards warning you when you have 30 seconds left for your response and when time is up. So if everyone is ready, we'll go ahead and jump into the questions. So the first question, and we're going to start with Attorney General Herring. If elected, what would be the top issues on your legislative agenda for reform that you would push for the General Assembly to enact?
Well, did you want us to do opening statements first?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Opening statements first.
All right.
Well, and you're first.
Well, good evening, everyone. And first, I want to thank the committee chairs for hosting this and all of you for watching. My name is Mark Herring. I'm Virginia's Attorney General, and I'm running for re-election to keep building on the progress we've been making together over the last 8 years. Before we were able to win this job back from the Republicans, they had treated it like it was a private law firm for the Republican Party. And I had a different vision. I believe the Attorney General is the people's lawyer. And I have totally transformed it. The first thing I did was go into court and say, no, we are not defending an unconstitutional ban on marriage for same-sex couples. We're going to fight for marriage equality, and we won. And now look at the progress we've made. Since then, I have transformed the office and shown Virginians just what an Attorney General can do for them. We've protected the Affordable Care Act and Planned Parenthood, got an in-state tuition for dreamers. We've fought to defend our new gun safety laws, fought against dangerous white supremacist extremism. I returned over $350 million to Virginians in consumer relief. And I led the effort to stop Trump's racist Muslim ban. And when Republicans wanted to keep their racially gerrymandered districts, I fought them in the US Supreme Court and won, and Democratic wins followed. I have proven that I can win even the biggest fights, and I've transformed the job into a progressive powerhouse. From healthcare to reproductive justice to criminal justice reform and the environment, there is so much more to do, and that is why I am asking again for your support as the Attorney General of Virginia to be the people's lawyer and to continue the progress that we've been making over the last 8 years.
Two minutes, Delegate Jones.
Well, thank
Good to
you,
have you.
Amy, and thank you to the chairs for hosting this wonderful gathering on a Friday night. I'm so honored to be with you all, and I'm excited to talk about some of these issues over the next hour. And for those of you who don't know me, I am Jay Jones. I represent the 89th District in the Virginia House of Delegates, and I'm excited to talk about our campaign, but I can't talk about these issues without telling you a little bit about myself. I am very lucky and fortunate that I can trace my lineage to slaves here in the American South, including Virginia, 5 generations back. And I often think about what those folks would think about and feel about their descendant who has the opportunity to be Virginia's first Black Attorney General. My grandfather, Hillary Jones, was a pioneering civil rights attorney here in Norfolk. He got really involved in the movement, even had my dad and my uncle integrate a school here in 1961. And so every time I'm upset, dejected, frustrated, I think about their struggles and how I stand on their shoulders. And as we move into 2021 and beyond, we have a real opportunity here to redefine ourselves about what we value, highlight, prioritize. We can chart a new course in this new Virginia decade. And I think now is the opportunity for us to really highlight our diversity. This state is 8.5 million people and growing. It is not the Virginia of 2017, of 2013, of my parents' generation. This is a new place, a new dominion. And we've done so many wonderful things in the legislature over the last few years, but I will tell you that now is our opportunity to really lean into the fresh faces, the new voices, and the different perspectives that have traditionally been left behind. And I think as we've gone around physically in 2019 and virtually and distantly in 2020, you hear people clamoring for change and you hear people looking for something new. And I believe that I offer that alternative this year in 2021. And I'm so excited to have the opportunity to be on the ballot, to put forth these ideas, to offer ourselves up. And I'm very excited about where we're going. So I'm happy to be with you. And Amy, I look forward to the questions and thank you guys.
All right, so the first question, and Attorney General Herring, you're going to go first. If elected, what would be the top issues on your legislative agenda for reform that you would push the General Assembly to enact?
So over the last week, once again, our nation's hearts poured out for those families who lost loved ones in a mass shooting in Boulder and in Atlanta. You know, assault weapons are very common. They're commonly used in mass shootings, and we need an assault weapons ban. And that would be at the top of my agenda, along with other gun violence prevention measures. You know, those shootings once again reinforced that we have a gun violence problem in this nation. And assault weapons are lethal. They are made for the battlefield. They should not be on our streets. So many times, we have had to come together and mourn the loss of loved ones. And you know, we are raising a generation of young people who go to school thinking, you know, there could be a mass shooting and they could be the next victim, or going to the park, or going to the mall or the movie theater. And it doesn't have to be this way. I have led the fight for gun violence prevention in Virginia. I started in 2013 and made it a key feature of my campaign, and I won, not in spite of it, but because of it. And together, we've been working with the advocates. We have finally, under new leadership, begun to make progress with expanded background checks, with reinstating the 1 gun a month law, with the red flag law, but there's a lot more to do. And the gun lobby hasn't gone away. They did go to court, and so we are defending the new gun safety measures, but there's a lot more work to do. And it doesn't have to be this way. We have all gone to too many vigils, too many funerals, and we have buried too many Virginians, and we have to continue our fight for more gun safety measures to keep our community safe.
Delegate Jones, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, if elected, my top priority from a legislative perspective will be justice reform. If we've seen anything over the last year, it's that our Commonwealth and this country have been plagued by issues as it relates to how our justice system treats people and how it has been constructed over the last several generations. None of us are surprised that our code has remnants of the Black codes and Jim Crow embedded within it. And while we've done, I think, tremendous things in Virginia, over the last year or so, we have a long way to go. When we talk about making things more equitable, I think we need to really rethink the entire sections of 18.2 and 19.2 in our criminal code, because even legalizing marijuana, even banning no-knock warrants, even banning chokeholds, to me, those are sort of minimum threshold things. We've got real opportunities here to reorient our justice system so that it works for every single person. And I will use the Office of the Attorney General and that platform and that pulpit to continue to be a loud voice, as I have been in the legislature, to stand with my fellow Democrats who call for a more fair and just and equitable Virginia. And embedded within this is an Office of Civil Rights in the Attorney General's office that actually has teeth, that has investigatory and enforcement powers, that can protect people, that can go after incidents of racism, whether it's in our police forces, in housing, in banking institutions, because this Commonwealth has a really challenging history with race. But 400 years on, I think we're finally beginning to reckon with that. And I think it's important for us to know and look at having an opportunity to put someone in that chair who looks like what that system has oppressed. My lived experiences, the work that we've done in the legislature, I think makes us well suited for this moment, to rise to meet that moment, to push for a more fair and just and equitable Virginia. And I look forward to that opportunity.
All right, question number 2. And Delegate Jones, you will go first. So Virginia is home to a growing immigrant population, and the new president has vowed to roll back hardline policies put into place by the previous administration. With Biden's efforts underway, what measures do you support to improve the current immigration system here? And how do you intend to protect the rights of Virginia's immigrants and temporary passport holders? 2 minutes.
Yeah, so it's no surprise, it's no secret that the Trump administration demonized immigrants over those 4 years, those very tragic and sad 4 years. And that's especially personal to me. My wife is an immigrant. She moved to the United States when she was 4. My in-laws are obviously from Asia and Africa. And so these experiences are very personal to me, to have to watch them, see people who are just like them be treated as less than, being treated in an inhumane way. That doesn't sit well with me at all. And so we will use the full weight and force of the office to champion the rights of immigrants, to make them feel as if they are members of this society, which we know that they are, contributing members. And so I'm hopeful and optimistic that the Biden administration will treat our immigrant population with a much more compassionate and decent view than the Trump administration. And we'll support the Biden administration as they continue to fix the mistakes made by the Trump administration. And I think it's important to note that oftentimes immigration and labor go hand in hand from a policy perspective. And as an AG, I would directly investigate and go after anybody who's committing wage theft and ensure that we aren't directly working with ICE and federal immigration services to do those heinous things to people. This is a very sensitive issue. This is something that, as we continue to diversify here in Virginia, it becomes more and more important. It becomes more and more pressing. And I think, again, when you have lived experiences, it makes it very helpful when you are seeking public office and seeking an office to meet the challenges of the moment. And for me, again, this is very, very personal. And my wife is actually upstairs as we speak. And we were talking about how we feel hopeful about the Biden administration and how I look forward to standing with President Biden and Vice President Harris as we seek to create a more compassionate, just, and fair system here in the Commonwealth of Virginia and reform our immigration system to work for everybody.
Attorney General Herring, you have 2 minutes.
We are a nation that was built, and it is built on immigrants coming to this country seeking a better life for themselves, for their families. And our immigration system needs to reflect our values, including things like compassion and understanding and mercy. And our immigration system has to reflect that. We shouldn't turn our back away from it. And what happened under the Trump administration was absolutely repugnant to our values, which is why when he started putting children in cages at the border, I filed suit to stop it because it was repugnant to our values. Time and again, I have stood up to make sure that immigrant communities in Virginia knew that they're welcome here, that they are a full part of our Commonwealth. Like when I worked to make sure that Dreamers got an equal education in Virginia and had the opportunity for in-state tuition. And I'll never forget that announcement at Northern Virginia Community College. There were so many Dreamers there, and so many of them were literally shedding tears of joy, telling me that it was changing their life for the better, forever. I stood up against Trump's Muslim ban. It was racist, it was un-American, and you know, it means so much to people when you're standing up and fighting for them and fighting for their inclusion into our Commonwealth. When I heard about the Muslim ban, I went to Dulles Airport to see what I could do to help. And a woman kind of made her way through when she heard that I was the Attorney General, and she grabbed me by the coat and said, please don't let them, they've got my 7-year-old son and they won't tell me anything, help me. And so that's why I worked so hard to get that struck down. And so, you know, countless immigrants have made Virginia their home. And time and again, I have worked to make sure that they felt like they were a full part of our Commonwealth.
All right, next question. And Attorney General Herring, you will be the first to respond. Virginia has a diverse population and hate crimes are unfortunately increasing. What would you do as Attorney General to increase awareness and ensure that hate crimes are reported and handled appropriately by law enforcement?
Well, the shooting in Atlanta brought to the forefront of our country the rise in hate against Asian Americans. We know that that was fueled over the last year by despicable and irresponsible rhetoric, a lot of which came from former President Trump, and it had deadly consequences. But we also know that that type of hate and harassment and intimidation has been going on for a long time, and not just with the Asian community, but a whole lot of vulnerable groups. And there is a single thread that ties the anti-Asian hate with hate against other vulnerable communities, and that is white supremacy that has been a part of our country for 400 years. It has no place anywhere in Virginia or anywhere in this country, and we have to stop it. The rise in hate needs to stop. This is something that I've seen even before the 2016 election, but it's been on the increase. And I've been working to call attention to the problem. I've been working to make sure that we have stronger laws. So I did a series of roundtables around the state a couple of years ago and allowed the victims of hate crimes to step forward and share their experiences. And you can see how toxic this is. I heard from a woman who watched her elderly father get beaten because he was wearing religious headwear. Someone who said they've lived in Hampton Roads for 3 decades and always felt safe, now looks over their shoulder and gets looks that scare him. This has to stop. And I dedicated our No Hate VA website to bringing more resources for vulnerable communities, to let them know that we stand with them, giving them information on how to report hate crimes. And often we know this is way underreported. And so we have to help provide them more safe spaces to do that, to stop this hate and violence.
All right, thank you very much. Delegate Jones, you have 2 minutes.
You know, obviously we've all seen the reports out of Atlanta. Those murders, those crimes were nothing short of heinous. It's difficult to talk about. I'm emotional just thinking about it. But I think, you know, it's important to draw a common thread for communities of color here in Virginia and across this country, who often are made to feel as if they are other and if they are less than or something else. And so, you know, I think in Virginia, we've done a tremendous job of prioritizing our values over the last couple of years, but you know, we need to lean into that. We've got to come together to make sure that all of our communities are safe, that people feel protected. And it's going to take us all standing shoulder to shoulder as we move ahead. As AG, I would ensure that no hate crime goes unaddressed and unprosecuted. And we will have easy and direct lines to folks to have the ability to report hate crimes. I think what is sort of known by those of us who have different color skin is that oftentimes you feel chilled from saying anything. Oftentimes you feel uncomfortable reporting those things. That's why our plan to put field offices all across the state in the lost and forgotten areas, places that might not even vote for Democrats, but have ridiculous instances of hate crimes and racial incidents. Those are the folks who need us the most. And so we've got to go and meet those folks where they are, roll up our sleeves, show them that we're there for them. And that's something that we'll prioritize as Attorney General, making sure that we're representing all 8.5 million people and growing each and every day. This is a rapidly diversifying Commonwealth. And as that happens, we've got to keep a keen eye on how things are moving and keep our ear to the ground. And it is really imperative for all of us as we look ahead that we have our assets and our resources in those places so that we know that we have their back and they know that we've got their back as well. I think it's easy for us to talk about it, but we want to be about it. And my office will always, always stand up to hate and discrimination with the full force.
All right, thank you very much. The next question is about internet fraud. Internet fraud complaints surged last year, according to the FBI, and unfortunately, it's become viewed as a routine problem rather than a priority. Victim losses are relatively small. It's bureaucratically cumbersome to collect evidence, and the system relies on self-reporting. What can the Attorney General's office do differently to prioritize this rampant problem? Delegate Jones, you are first with 2 minutes.
Obviously the coronavirus pandemic changed the way that we live. And I do hope that everybody who's watching tonight, if you haven't been vaccinated yet, please go do so. Please sign up because that's going to make that light get bigger at the end of the tunnel so that we can all do this in person. And we don't have to rely on the internet for our day-to-day operations as it relates to work, as we've seen over the last year. And it's no secret that fraud on the internet has spiked astronomically because of the new normal. And as AG, we would go after those people. We will spread awareness for internet fraud and its implications. We will hold, especially those folks in big tech, accountable, whether it's Facebook, Google, Amazon. Our world has changed. And so those folks have really sort of gained an enormous amount of power. And I think we need to watch that with a keen eye, because when historically you've seen folks get a whole bunch of power concentrated in certain places, the outcome is not particularly good on the back end. We want to make sure we're holding those corporate bad actors accountable online. People cannot abuse the data privacy regulations. I was proud to support the Consumer Data Protection Act from Delegate Hayes this year in the legislature, and I look forward to having the opportunity to enforce that as Attorney General, using that office to meet this moment, because tech is not going anywhere and big tech is certainly not going anywhere. But we want to make sure that as a consumer protection office, we are searching out and enforcing all of those laws that we have to curb abusive practices, making it so hard on these people. Not that they can't have a legitimate business and a legitimate business interest, but we've got to look out for our most vulnerable. And I think now, as our lives have changed dramatically, this is one of those times where you can devote resources to using the full weight of your office to make sure that everybody knows that they're safe, and especially during our darkest times. And so we will continue to be vigilant. We'll continue to hold those bad actors accountable. They will know who we are. They will see our faces. They will know our voices, and they will know that we are on them each and every day.
All right, thank you, Delegate Jones. Attorney General Herring, you have 2 minutes.
Well, protecting Virginians from predatory scammers and putting money back in Virginians' pockets has been a top priority of mine, and it will continue to be. Unfortunately, the scammers and technology are both continuing to evolve, and that means we have to continue to be creative and try to stay one step ahead. And one of the ways that I have tried to address this problem is by regalvanizing our triad program and work with the senior community in partnership with local law enforcement. And it has gone a long way to helping seniors protect themselves from becoming the victim of one of these scams. We focus really in 3 ways. One, we do a lot of prevention and education, because if you are, a lot of these scammers are located halfway around the globe. And so prevention is oftentimes the best way to make sure that people don't suffer a loss. But we also do a lot of work on data breaches, which make people more vulnerable. And then we also bring enforcement actions, working with our federal partners and other law enforcement. And we have shut down a robocaller that put hundreds of millions of calls into Virginia. So this is something that is a top priority of mine. And I have outreach coordinators in every region of the state to make sure that we are going out into the community, talking to associations and others, letting them know about this. And it is a major part of their education and outreach effort to let people know about scams and protect them. One of the ones that we've been working hard to get information out about has been federal relief payment scams, and to try to educate people so that they're on the lookout so that they don't become the victim of a scam.
All right, thank you very much. The next question is about the Virginia Consumer Data Protection Act. That's going to be going into effect in 2013, providing Virginians the opportunity to have more control over their personal data. The Attorney General's office is going to be providing the sole enforcement on this. So how will your office prepare and prioritize residents' data privacy when this law goes into effect when facing these large companies? Attorney General Herring, you have 2 minutes.
Well, actually, I'm not waiting for the law to take into effect. In fact, I've been enforcing other data protection laws and privacy laws since day one. Technology in the 21st century has been developing very rapidly, especially information technology. It's also become, the data itself has become a kind of currency in its own right. And that makes protecting people's privacy, protecting their data, even more important. And so it is a top priority of my computer crimes team. This is something that we work on continuously, making sure that companies their feet are held to the fire so that if there's a data breach, they notify their customers as soon as possible. And just so folks know how this can be so damaging to people, and I know because it's happened to me. So what happens is when there's a data breach and your personal information is out on the internet for sale, somebody can come in, scoop it up, and open up credit card accounts, bank accounts in your name, your address, your social security number, and the next thing you know, you find out that you're getting calls from creditors for things that you never bought or did anything to get. And it could come at a really bad time where maybe you've got household emergencies. So we work with them when somebody's the victim of identity theft like that. We work to give them a passport so that creditors and others know that they're the victim of an identity theft. And also have sued companies when they haven't lived up to the expectations of them over and over again, like Google, Facebook, and others. We haven't hesitated to do that. And also another part of the work is going to be about trading on data itself. We need to make sure that people know who's in charge of their own data and that they have control over it so it's protected.
Right. Thank you, Attorney General Herring. Delegate Jones, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Amy. I was happy to support this measure from Delegate Hayes, and it was the byproduct of a lot of deliberation and a lot of debate, because I think this is a vanguard law here in the United States in terms of how we are engaging with data privacy and data protection. And I think we can't talk about this without acknowledging that we have law enforcement here who has been cooperating with ICE and sharing data that belongs to our residents in a way that's not particularly how we would like to see that happen. And so again, I think to my immigrant wife and my immigrant family about how that would impact them and how it would impact so many other millions of Virginians. And so we have to keep a keen eye on this as we move ahead. Our world has changed in ways that none of us could imagine. And now data and information is currency. You see that with elections. You see that with the financial system. You see that with everything else that we come across. And so we've got to put a lot of resources and energy and passion into making sure that folks know about this law. I think part of what has been problematic over the last several years is that people don't know that we are there to step in and work on their behalf. This law will be great because on a going forward basis, we have the authority to do that. But I do think that part of this is an engagement process. And that goes back to our field office program, because this is geared toward helping those who are, I think, the most vulnerable, whether you're a senior, whether you are a teenager, whether you are someone who is of lesser means. We want to make sure that we're working for all Virginians to let them know that this is even there, that this is a remedy for them, and that we can be there for them. And so that's why our outreach through our field office and satellite office program will be so critical. It's about meeting this moment. And I think this is the time for us to step up, step in, and be there for Virginians each and every day as it relates to their data privacy.
All right, thank you, Delegate Jones. This next question is about drug pricing. What would you do to address alleged widespread conspiracies by drug manufacturers to artificially inflate and manipulate prices, reduce competition, and flout drug pricing requirements to ensure that Virginians have access to affordable prescription drugs, which can be especially a problem in underserved and rural communities? Delegate Jones, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I think this is one of those times, and this is one of those areas where the AG has got to be as aggressive as possible. You can't cower in the face of big pharma. I think, as you see in my legislative record, I'm not hesitant to take on the big fights, whether it be Dominion or other large corporate actors, when they take advantage of Virginians. This office is, at its heart, a consumer protection agency. We want to make sure that everybody is protected, especially when it relates to their healthcare. The pandemic certainly exacerbated that, and we saw some terrible instances of folks being taken advantage of they're being gouged on medication in terms of the prices. And we've got to make sure that we are there for people. And I was just in Southwest Virginia last weekend. I toured a school in Bristol, and I saw the immediate impact of how underserved our children are in the rural areas as it relates to education. And it's no different with healthcare. And I thought it was fascinating because as I was driving up, I remarked to the folks in the car, I said, this looks just like Norfolk, Virginia. This could be any other place here in the Commonwealth. And our entire candidacy has been centered around protecting people's civil rights and bringing this office back to the people. We can't talk about working for all 8.5 million Virginians if we're not going to go meet them where they are. That's why I've pledged as not just a candidate, but as an elected attorney general, to visit all 133 localities in the state, either virtually or physically, hopefully physically sooner rather than later. Those who are the most underserved deserve to hear from their attorney general. They deserve to see us. They deserve to be able to have us right there at their fingertips. I was actually fortunate enough to pass by the Abingdon office of the AG's. That there's one office in Abingdon, and the folks said, we didn't even know this place existed. And so healthcare is important. We will be there. We will make sure that we are holding these big folks accountable. Their worst nightmare is Jay Jones as Attorney General, and I look forward to going after them when they try to take advantage of folks because they won't like what they get.
Thank you, Delegate Jones. Attorney General Herring, you have 2 minutes.
Big pharma and executives who play games with prescription drug prices are playing games with people's lives. And oftentimes they are lining their pockets at the expense of Virginians. And that has to stop. People shouldn't have to make a choice between putting food on the table or buying their prescription drugs, and millions of Virginians rely on prescription drugs. And I'll tell you what I'll do to pharmaceutical companies who do that. I'll sue them, because that's what I've done, and that's what I'm doing right now. One of the biggest lawsuits I have, and I was among one of the first attorneys general in the country to do it, was to bring suit against 20 pharmaceutical companies and 15 pharmaceutical executives for what our complaint alleges was illegal price fixing and a conspiracy to keep prices of drugs higher than they should have to be. Virginians should not have to pay more in order so that big pharma can just make more money and more money. And when they charge unfair prices and when they do it in illegal ways, I will not hesitate to hold them accountable. So I will continue to fight unfair prices and unfair price fixing. And the Affordable Care Act is also something that is really, really important here. I've been to the Supreme Court not once, but twice to protect the Affordable Care Act. Hundreds of thousands of Virginians rely on Virginia's exchanges in order to get their health insurance. Hundreds of thousands of Virginians rely on Medicaid expansion to get their health care. Millions of Virginians rely on prescription drugs, many of which have protections under the Affordable Care Act. And I've gone to Supreme Court twice to protect it, to make sure that the Virginians' health care is protected. And Virginians should never have to make that choice between putting food on the table or having to pay prescription drug prices, especially when they're unfairly and illegally higher than they should be.
All right, thank you, Attorney General Herring. This next question is about wrongful convictions. So wrongful convictions are widespread, and those pursuing these efforts face unyielding opposition from local prosecutors and often state attorneys general who have a tendency to reflexively defend convictions. The Attorney General's office recently created a new department made up of attorneys to review wrongful convictions. Although there's not a lot of information available about how it will function, what can the Attorney General do to ensure that wrongful conviction examinations are not hampered by tunnel vision and politics so that justice can be done? Attorney General Herring, you have 2 minutes.
Our goal as a Commonwealth always has to be truth and justice. It can never be just about convictions or maintaining convictions in the face of logic and facts that say otherwise. When I joined Keith Harwood's petition for a writ of actual innocence in 2015, I said that when the Commonwealth gets it wrong, when we did not serve justice, we have to say so and we have to fix it. To wrongfully convict someone is to deny them their freedom and countless opportunities. And so that's why I created the state's first statewide conviction integrity unit, so that additional resources, additional lawyers could be brought in to more proactively identify wrongful convictions and then get them overturned. And one of the things that's really important about this unit is that it will have an investigator, because in cases where we would have to go back to a particular department, oftentimes we'd have to go to not just the very department, but the person who investigated the case to say, review the work. But we will have an independent investigator now who can do that. And there were important changes that the General Assembly made to state law. There used to be so many hurdles and procedural barriers. It almost seemed like it was giving the illusion of hope, but only setting up people for disappointment. And now the Commonwealth, through the Attorney General, can be a partner in trying to seek out truth and justice and make sure that we do everything we can to overturn wrongful convictions, because that is just robbing people of their freedom and countless opportunities. And now, thanks to the changes the General Assembly made and this unit, we have an opportunity to be a partner in seeking justice and truth.
Great. Thank you, Attorney General Herring. Delegate Jones, you have 2 minutes.
Well, justice and innocence should never be a political football. It should never be used to score political points. I have been disappointed with the way that we've treated some of these cases over the last several years, and I'm, I guess, encouraged by the creation of this new department. But I think, like you mentioned, Amy, there's not a lot of information about it, and so the timing to me seems slightly dubious. But I'll point you to a situation that happened in Norfolk just last year, in which Esther Thorne, who was wrongfully convicted based on bad testimony, filed a writ of actual innocence, and the AG's office defended her conviction based on a technicality. And I didn't know about this until some of the advocates came and brought this to my desk, but certainly happy that now that situation is on its way to resolution. But I think what we talk about when we talk about justice, when we talk about wrongful convictions, oftentimes those convictions have been levied against folks who had sort of poor access to legal redress, and people who have been abused by the system because of the color of their skin. And so I think we talk about living our values, rising to meet this moment. I think it's important to have someone in the chair who knows these struggles, who understands these issues. And for me, justice has been not just something I've been committed to, but it's been my family's commitment for the last several generations. And so we are well aware of how this works. And so that unit, when we inherit it, will be robust, and it will be laser focused on making sure that people who have been wrongfully convicted, or if there is a specter of doubt about whether or not they are incarcerated for the wrong reasons, we will look into it. We will use the resources. We will go after it, because this justice system has been skewed against certain populations for far too long. It is inequitable. That is a fact. And so as we move ahead, we've got to continue to prioritize seeking truth, but doing it in a way that is consistent and not just popping up when we have elections. And I want to make sure everybody's aware that we are supposed to be just and supposed to seek truth at all times, not just in June and November.
All right, thank you, Delegate Jones. The next question is about voting rights. So Virginia is continuing to expand voting rights while there are attacks against voting rights across the country and other states. What would you do as Attorney General to ensure Virginians can exercise their right to vote and the election system is free of discrimination? Delegate Jones, you have 2 minutes.
Well, what we've seen in Georgia, it seems to be a recurring theme here, has been nothing short of disgusting and despicable. As someone who is the descendant of folks who know what it's like to not be able to vote, this is personal for me too. And I have not just family, but family friends who have been denied that right, whether by law or by other means for years. And frankly, we have to make sure that we expand access to the ballot box at all costs. The right to vote is sacred. It's what makes us special, not just as Virginians with the birthplace of democracy here in this country, but as Americans. My immigrant in-laws know what it's like to live in repressive regimes where your vote doesn't count. That's why, and I'm so proud of the fact that we announced the intention to create a voter protection and election integrity unit here in Virginia. We saw instances of discrimination and intimidation in Fairfax just last year, and we can't stand for that. That this doesn't exist already is downright shocking to me. For me, voting is paramount. I've never missed an election in my life. I know that that right can be taken away by folks who don't want us to be there. And so we will maintain our vigilance, make sure that we have outreach to our communities, especially those where this intimidation is likely to happen or has occurred in the past because of our discriminatory history here in Virginia, which we've got to confront head on. And so this unit will be laser focused on that because we vote a lot here in Virginia. We've sort of pared it back a little bit with the recent law that the governor just signed, but we vote every June and every November, and even years and odd years. And no matter what election we have, no matter who you're going to vote for, we want you to be able to go without fear, without the prospect of intimidation, the specter of harassment, because that is the most important thing that we've got. It's what makes us special. And so this unit will be the first of its kind here in Virginia. And I think it's long overdue. And I look forward to creating it. I look forward to staffing it. And I look forward to having my hands in it each and every day because we vote all the time.
All right, thank you, Delegate Jones. Attorney General Herring, you have 2 minutes.
Well, voting is the foundational right of our democracy. It is a sacred right. People fought and bled at home and abroad to defend it. And I have done everything in my power to protect Virginians' right to vote. This wave of voter suppression laws that we're seeing across the country is done to suppress people of color and their voice, their votes. And it shows that there are some people who are willing to sacrifice the people's right to vote in order to hold on to power, and it has to stop. Thankfully, here in Virginia, under new leadership in the General Assembly, we've been able to repeal a bunch of those laws. And something that I'm really excited about is the Virginia Voting Rights Act. It is a landmark statement about how Virginians want to make sure that everyone who has the right to vote can do so freely, without fear of intimidation. And it's really a landmark statement. And my team worked with the sponsor in order to include authority to enforce those laws. And last year was a really challenging year with COVID and with Trump, but yet in Virginia, we made sure that Virginians could count on our electoral system to vote safely, securely, and accurately. We went into court and got a court order, a court agreement to make sure that the signature, the witness requirement on absentee ballots was waived if you felt like it would jeopardize your health. Nobody should have to choose between their health and having to vote or getting to vote. My team worked to make sure that when Trump tried to make it harder for people to vote by mail by sabotaging the Postal Service, we sued him and got an injunction to block it. And when some people, Trump supporters, went to Fairfax on the first day of early voting and engaged in the activity that could potentially have been voter intimidation, I immediately put out a legal opinion laying out the state and federal laws that prohibit it so everyone would know that that is not permitted or tolerated in Virginia. And I put together training videos for local law enforcement and for local elections officials so that if an incident like that ever occurred again, they would know the tools that they had and how they could respond to it. And that's consistent with how I have worked my entire career to protect
Attorney General,
people's,
that's time. Sorry.
to protect people's votes. I'm sorry, I didn't see the cards.
That's okay. Our next question is about the Mountain Valley Pipeline, an issue that has been of concern, especially to people here in Western Virginia on both sides of the aisle. So the Mountain Valley Pipeline has restarted its permitting process to cross hundreds of wetlands and streams to complete a controversial natural gas pipeline. The issue will come before the State Water Control Board again on a water quality certification, and the board will likely rely heavily on the Attorney General's advice once again. Would you work to find a path to stop the Mountain Valley Pipeline? And if so, how? Attorney General Herring, you're first with 2 minutes.
So I really question the wisdom of major investments in fossil fuel infrastructure like this pipeline right now, when we want to do more investments and move to more renewable and cleaner forms of energy. And I question the need for this pipeline in particular. But my job as Attorney General is to make sure that the company is following all of the applicable environmental rules and regulations. And that's what I've been doing. That's why I sued them over the environmental violations and secured a $2 million penalty, as well as legally and judicially enforceable higher standards for the environment. I've also filed a Supreme Court brief in the Atlantic Coast pipeline case, arguing that it was not needed. And a few months after that, they withdrew the project. These actions are all consistent with my strong record on climate change and protecting the environment. I filed suit to, or I defended the attack on the Clean Power Plan. I filed suit to block Trump's attack on the clean car rules. And I sued to stop Trump from allowing offshore drilling off of Virginia's coast. And as Attorney General, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that Virginia is a leader in climate change and in making sure that the next generations of Virginians will inherit a healthy and livable planet.
Thank you, Attorney General Herring. Delegate Jones, you have 2 minutes.
Well, look, I'm opposed to the Mountain Valley Pipeline. I've not given up the ghost that we can stop that, just like the ACP was stopped as well. I think my commitment to energy and the environment has been unflinching. Clearly, there was something that's going on with the State Water Control Board and concerning the certifications, and there was a breakdown with the enforcement mechanisms, but we've got to use those enforcement mechanisms to make sure we hold those folks accountable, to make sure that they're following the law as necessary. And if that's not working, we'll go to the legislature. I've been a very vocal advocate against some of these projects in the legislature. I think, as I've said to many folks before, Dominion Energy's worst nightmare is Jay Jones as Attorney General. We continue to stay on them day in and day out to make sure that we are holding not just our biggest energy companies accountable, but protecting our environment. I grew up in Norfolk. I'm a kid who used to play in the Chesapeake Bay. I understand it's our most treasured and valued resource. And so this is something that is incredibly personal and potent for me as well. And so we will be loud, we will be vocal, we will use the pulpit to make sure that we're on the right side of the issue from the beginning, to make sure that folks know that they don't want to mess with us, that we are there standing in their way. This isn't a regional issue, although I think folks would like to say, well, that's a Southwest issue. This is an entire Virginia issue. And this is something that I think we haven't been as vocal on as we should. And it's certainly something that as Attorney General, folks will know where we stand. They'll know that we are going to continue to push back against policies and against projects that are going to take us backward. We have to look ahead. While the Clean Economy Act wasn't perfect, I was proud to support that because it puts us on a path to getting to where we need to be. And we as AG will continue to work and push and use our voice and insert ourselves into the conversation more than just going and filing a brief or going and saying that we are going to do something. We will be there. You will always hear from us on these particular issues. And this is something that, again, is very, very important to me and will continue to be.
Thank you, Delegate Jones. Next question is about the Equal Rights Amendment. What can advocates for the ERA expect from you regarding the ERA? Will there be a full-throated commitment to continue to fight for the ERA as an unfinished issue? And what issues can the Attorney General prioritize that are important to women? Delegate Jones, you're first with 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, I think my support for the ERA has been full-throated. As Attorney General, we will continue that. We will make sure that we get that into the Constitution. I was proud to cast my vote for that last year. I gave a speech on the floor in which I talked about how my mother was paid less than her male counterparts for years, even though she was excelling, was performing better than they were. And so that really informs why I care about the ERA in particular. And again, voting for that was one of the best things that I've done in the legislature. But we've got to continue to go farther. We've got to make sure we prioritize equal pay, make sure that we are prioritizing women. I am the product of a village of women. My mother, my grandmothers, my aunts, our family friends, the folks who picked me up from soccer practice and basketball practice after school, because we want to make sure we value and highlight them. We've got to repeal the Hyde Amendment at the federal level to make sure that the DC lawmakers know where we are. It's discriminatory. It limits the healthcare of Black and brown women. We will always stand with women and their right to choose. We will never let an assault like that happen here in Virginia. We obviously want to maintain our Democratic majorities because we've done so much to make this a more just and equitable place for women who need to make their own healthcare decisions. But should something go wrong and should the Republicans take over, which I hope never happens, we will be there standing in their way. This is, I think, one of the prevailing issues of our time. It is going to become, I think, more potent. I think you see that this has become something that is getting a little bit more attention in Washington, D.C., but in Virginia, we have, I think, taken some great strides in the last couple of years, and I will continue to work to enforce those laws to make sure that every woman feels protected here in the Commonwealth. And I say that as a newlywed 6 months in, and someone who, again, has been raised by a village of women and will continue to prioritize and value them, defend the ERA, make sure we get into the Constitution, and continue to support women and their rights here in Virginia.
All right, thank you, Delegate Jones. Attorney General Herring, you have 2 minutes.
Oh, yes, I have been and will continue to be a full-throated advocate for the Equal Rights Amendment and women's rights. I was raised by a single mom, and before my sister and I were born, she was a flight attendant, and she loved that job. And when she met my dad and made plans to marry, she was forced to quit because you couldn't be a flight attendant and be a married woman. She loved that job. She told us how much she loved it as we were growing up. And I saw how much that hurt her and how that was so unfair. Now, we've come a long way since then, but still, women are still discriminated against. They're still struggling to get equal pay for equal work. I mean, like just last week, probably a lot of us saw the video that a player took of the women's weight room compared to the men's weight room in the NAACP basketball tournament. I mean, there are just so many ways that women are discriminated against and their opportunities are held back, and that has to change. And that's why I was proud that Virginia voted and was the 38th and final state needed to ratify the amendment, Equal Rights Amendment. I am proud to be leading the fight to make sure that it is acknowledged as a part of the Constitution, which it is. And sure, we have come a long way, but there's still a lot more work to be done. I have also fought in court to protect women's reproductive rights and issued legal opinions to help protect their rights. I believe and trust in women to make their own healthcare decisions. I have also led a multi-year, multi-million-dollar effort to eliminate Virginia's rape kit backlog. And that was a wrong that we made right when we completed it. And it has meant so much to survivors. I've heard from survivors when we made that announcement, as well as when we completed it, that it meant so much to them to know that their Commonwealth understood the trauma that they've gone through, even if their perpetrator had been identified and brought to justice, that we were standing with them on a path of healing and recovery. We've also got a lot of work ahead of us, and that's why I'll always be a proud and loud advocate for women's equity.
All right, thank you, Attorney General Herring. The next question is about worker rights and labor laws. So what would you do as Attorney General to step up enforcement of labor laws and influence labor and employment policies? Attorney General Herring, you are first with 2 minutes.
Well, throughout my career, I have been a consistent supporter of and fought for better wages for working men and women, for better benefits, for better working conditions. You know, I come at this from a lot of different ways. One of them is my own experience. My first job out of high school was working construction as a laborer. My second year, I worked my way up to running a jackhammer 158 hours a week in the hot Virginia sun. And we were given no ear protection. We were given no lung protection for the concrete dust. And that taught me a lot. It taught me that all workers deserve to be treated fairly and paid fairly. They deserve quality, affordable health care. They deserve the best education possible for their kids. And all workers should have the right to organize, to bargain collectively. And I believe that all workers who benefit from collective bargaining should pay their fair share of that. I support the fight for 15. Every worker should be paid a living wage. And I even joined the picket line in order to protest the low wages that some workers at the airports were being paid. I fought for poultry workers' safety because during COVID times, the owner of the plant wasn't doing what they should. And I've sued transportation contractor for worker violations on the 395 Hot Lanes project. And central to that was worker misclassification. And just recently, I established a new worker protection unit because we need to bring dedicated resources and bring targeted enforcement and oversight in order to make sure that we continue to fight wage theft and worker misclassification.
All right, thank you, Attorney General Herring. Delegate Jones, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, you know, look, my grandfather passed away at the age of 52, and my grandmother was a homemaker, but she still had 3 boys to support. So she became a teacher at Norview Middle School and joined the EAN, the Education Association of Norfolk. And I think those values have been a really big thing in my life because she talked about the strength, the bonds that those folks had and how they stood together day in and day out. So, you know, it's no secret. I have been and will always be a champion for working with Virginians, not just during election seasons. And I think a worker protection unit is something that should have been established a long time ago to demonstrate our commitment to working Virginians. They are the backbone of our workforce. We talk a lot about being the best state for business, but we can't be the best state for business without having the strongest workforce. And if those folks don't feel like they're protected, if they feel like they can't make a complaint without being retaliated against or terminated, then what are we even here for? Incidences of wage theft and worker misclassification are disgusting. They need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent. As AG, we will continue to prioritize that as we've done in the legislature. We won't let those complaints stack up on the end of a desk and collect any dust. We want to make sure that we are prioritizing our workers. Frankly, for me, I think this is something that's long overdue. Supporting worker rights has been something that I've done in the legislature, but don't just ask me. Our campaign has been endorsed by LIUNA, the largest labor union here in Virginia, and just yesterday, the IBEW, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, all their local unions have decided to support Jay Jones for Attorney General because they know that I will always stand with labor, stand with their values, and stand shoulder to shoulder with them as we continue to try to make this the best place for working people in the country.
Great, thank you, Delegate Jones. That was all the questions we had for tonight. We covered a lot of ground, I think, and thank you to the candidates for answering all of them. We're going to move to closing statements now. Delegate Jones, you're going to go first, and you have 2 minutes.
Well, I want to thank you, Amy, and thank the chairs for organizing and inviting us to do this tonight. It's been a great way to spend my Friday night with all of you. I also want to thank Clarence because I don't know if you guys can see him, but he's been prompting us on time all night. So thank you, Clarence, for your yeoman's work doing that. But I hope you guys have liked what you've heard tonight. We've covered a lot of topics, but I do think the thing that you hear is that we have an opportunity to redefine ourselves here in this Commonwealth, in this new Virginia decade, as we march, standing shoulder to shoulder each and every day, trying to make this a more just and equitable place. I am so excited about the fact that Governor Northam has endorsed our campaign. He and Pam are all in, along with Congresswoman Elaine Luria, former Attorney General Mary Sue Terry and a number of members of the General Assembly who believe in our energy, our passion, our conviction about how we can work together going forward. I think we have a diverse array of people here in Virginia, and I do think it's time for some new voices, some fresh faces, and different perspectives who got the ideas, who got the commitment to make sure that as we move ahead, we are well taken care of, and we've got someone in that chair who is going to be proactive and not reactive. And I know that I'm that person. So I hope that we can get your support in this primary. If you like what you've heard, I hope that you will join our efforts. Please go to jjones.com and sign up. And I hope that over the course of the next few months, as we begin to expand a little bit in terms of vaccination, we get out and do the in-person things. I can see you guys all physically. It's been great to get to know you guys virtually. Those of you who I didn't know before over the last year or so, and we are rocking and rolling, and it's been a lot of fun. And so I can't wait for the next couple of months. It's going to be an experience, but I hope that we can get you on Team J, and I hope that you've enjoyed tonight. So thank you guys for giving up your time, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right. Thank you, Delegate Jones. Attorney General Herring, 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Well, again, I'd like to thank the chairs for hosting this and for your leadership. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And it has been wonderful spending time with you this Friday night. Now, serving as your Attorney General has been the honor of a lifetime. And I think I'd like to end and close with completing the story that I started a few minutes ago with my mother, who was forced to quit her job on account of the no marriage rule. You know, about 25 years after that, there was a class action lawsuit, and she was offered her job back. Now, her circumstances were different, and she declined that opportunity, but it made her feel so much better knowing that wrong had been made right. And that always stuck with me. And by the time I got to law school, I realized how important it is to have somebody who is helping to put the law on the side of the people who truly need it, people who are vulnerable, people who are marginalized, people who are discriminated against, people who truly need the arm and shield of the law to help and protect them. I'm in this fight because I want to continue to right wrongs. I want to make Virginians' lives better by doing that. And I have broken barrier after barrier after barrier to win progressive causes and values, not because it was easy or because it just sort of happened by accident, but I did it because, and had been successful because I'm standing up for what's right and making sure that we get it done. I have proven that I have the experience and know-how to defeat Republicans and keep this job in Democratic hands. I've proven that I have the experience and know-how to successfully and effectively fight for the values that we share. So please join the campaign. You can go to herring4ag.com and get email updates. You can follow us on your favorite social media platform. And I am asking again for your support as Attorney General, as the people's lawyer, to keep the progress going. So I'm asking for your support and your vote. Thank you all so much. And I look forward to seeing you on the campaign trail.
Wow, thank you guys both so very much for joining us this evening. I think this was great. We were able to cover a whole bunch of different topics. So thank you so very much. Thank you to everybody who attended this webinar and those who watched via Facebook Live. We appreciate all this support. Giant shout out to our moderator, Amy Friedenberger. Thank you so much. I think you did a fantastic job. And special thank you to the other members of the Virginia Chairs Association team. We did it, yay. And a giant shout out to Ricardo, who helped us get all of this wonderful technical stuff together so that we were able to present this to you. I hope everybody has a wonderful evening and hope to see you again. Have a good night.
Take care, everyone.